Cool.
So, welcome to Hopeful Conversations. I'm Vicky Montague, and today I'm joined by Julie Cluley, who is a lovely dear friend of mine, who is another lady who I trained with to become a wellbeing coach or whatever you want to call it. Um, and so I've known Julie for coming up to 2 years, I guess, nearly,
Yeah,
something like
must be, yeah.
that.
Mhm.
And we've both kind of been on quite a journey, I'd say. And
Definitely.
and Julie's got some cool things that she's seen, some interesting areas where when I first knew her were kind of big issues, I suppose, big um, areas of her life that looked challenging. And so we were just chatting before hitting record, and as she pointed out, there's definitely been big changes in those areas, but she hadn't really recognized them, which is all too often the case, that we have a challenge in our life, and and things move on, and we don't recognize that that challenge is kind of almost disappeared because there's more challenges. There's never an end to the challenges that we come across, I guess. um, so I'll hand over to Julie to tell us a little bit about what those challenges were when we first met each other, and maybe what what you kind of see, what's happened since then.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I will do my best to explain or verbalize what's probably quite intangible. As Vicky pointed out, I kind of hadn't really realized till we sat on this call and talked about hopeful conversations, because it's not something you really do every day, or I don't anyway. I'm kind of bogged down in life with kids and business and um, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, to sit down and say, okay, hopeful conversations, what have you seen? So when I first met Vicky a couple of years ago, I was experiencing what I thought was peri-menopause, menopause type symptoms, um, varied from, yeah, the kind of hot flushes, excessive bleeding, insomnia, anxiety. And whenever I went to get help on any of these issues individually, I felt like everyone was quick to kind of say, oh, yeah, well, that's fine. It's your hormones. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And I was like, well, okay, I get that. That's fine. It probably is. That's like my age, and that's what happens in my body, and that's fine. But what's can somebody tell me something that might be helpful? Because at that point, I wasn't getting anything. I was getting, oh, you've got a sore tummy, put a hot water bottle on it type stuff.
Yeah.
And, anxiety, well, you could meditate a bit more, which I did find meditation quite useful, incidentally. But it was a lot of hard work
Mhm.
when I was already pretty, in my head anyway, pretty busy, stressed out, and adding on something else to do wasn't all that helpful at the time. So yeah, all of the kind of things that were suggested to kind of control these individual little problems were helpful without really changing anything, to be honest. And then I kind of bumped into this conversation around what's referred to as three Ps, and um, met a wonderful lady called Tanya Elversley, and she changed a lot of that thinking for me. And she pointed out that it's perfectly normal for your body to go through the menopause, and it's not something that needs to be fought. It's not something that needs to be hidden. It's not something that needs to be put away in a box or well, I don't know, in some way. Sorry, I think that's some just arriving. Sorry about that. With me. I just sorry, 2 seconds. Sorry about that.
All
My
right.
husband's appearing back from his running around the hills. Um, yeah,
The lives of real people, hey?
yes, exactly. And also the lives of real people at this moment in time as
Yeah,
we're recording during lockdown when there's a lot of people in the house all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Anyway.
Don't worry, I've had printers going and children coming through and, all sorts
Yeah,
in the
all
podcast.
sorts of things going on. Hopefully the dog will stay out with him just now and give us all some peace. Yeah, so I was kind of getting to what is the hopeful bit, i.e., I suppose sitting here now, 2 years on, as we spoke about it before we came on, was like, oh yeah, I don't actually experience any of that anymore.
Wow.
Um,
I
yeah.
say wow to that because when I first met you, one of the biggest issues that you had was around heavy bleeding. Like
Mhm.
at that and the insomnia, I think, were kind of really front of mind. These are massive problems.
Yeah,
I need to
absolutely.
try and fix. And you were kind of looking for solutions and
Yeah.
you know have it. And I think at that point though you had a sort of an inkling that maybe there was something else going on, but I don't think maybe when we met, I'm not sure that you'd spoken to Tanya by then. So
No, I don't think I had. I don't think I had. And so I suppose, although I could see that what I experience in life is coming from my thinking, there was definitely something around that whole kind of thing whereby um, they say that, sorry, she's back. That whole kind of thing about your experience, your feeling experience is coming from your thinking, which is one thing. But I was kind of like, yeah, but I'm actually bleeding and I actually can't sleep, and so therefore, well, what's that? So it was really interesting how I could see that very clearly in a lot of areas in my life, but in those ones I couldn't really see it. It looked very real to me. And I suppose what's helpful is to not look in the direction of I need to fix this problem, whatever it is, and to look in the direction of where it's coming from, where the actual experience is coming from. And it can only be coming from the thinking that you're having in any given moment. And with that, it's just such a big freedom because now, if I, wake up early in the morning or in the middle of the night or whatever, um, I can be awake and I can be thinking, okay, well, I need to get myself back to sleep because I've got to get up early tomorrow. Or I can realize that actually it's not it's not really up to me where who is putting that thinking into my head. Um, and I suppose I just like it happened the other day. I just kind of woke up early in the morning and I was like, at some point I remembered that, oh yeah, it's not up to me to put myself back to sleep. I know I'll fall asleep at some point, and touch wood, I'll wake up again at some point. um, but that's not really up to me. And the whole kind of thinking around who's controlling what is really, yeah, is really helpful. And yeah, I'm not sure if I'm making much sense today, but
I was going to
yeah,
say, like, I know there'll be people listening and they'll be like, okay, well, I've got insomnia. I, I wake up and I can't go back to sleep. Or I have got, like you said, I have got real physical issues going on that are clearly to do with my hormones, because I'm of a certain age and that's what happens. That's what I've read, that you get these things. So it must be to do with my hormones.
yeah,
When you say it's not up to you to make you go back to sleep, can
yeah.
you, like, I mean, I could articulate what I hear in that, but I'm just kind of interested to know more about what you mean by that, I guess.
Yeah, I think what I mean is that, or what I've seen in my experience is that if I think that it's up to me to put myself back to sleep, I try really hard to do that. And in my experience, it doesn't happen. Whereas at some point, I'll surrender to the fact that life just is what it is. It's going to do what it's going to do. And I don't mean by I'm just going to accept people being mean to me, or, accept, I don't know, just kind of give up or something. But I suppose in some sense, I prefer the word surrender. Don't know why, just sits better with me. But I guess it's the same thing. It's like, okay, fine, I give up life. You want me to be awake for whatever reason, so I'm awake. Fine. Well, what now? And I just find it helpful to remember that and sit. I guess sitting in that usually uncomfortable feeling, knowing that I don't have to do anything about it,
Yeah.
it's just actually really relaxing. And then, well, what do you know? Fall asleep.
Yeah.
It's giving up the struggle. It's giving up the fight. And I guess maybe giving up the fight with your body around hormones and time of life, peri-menopause, whatever you want to call it. It's like, maybe, just maybe, your body knows what it's doing. And maybe it's doing it to wake you up to something, or point you in a direction, or get you to do something. I certainly have found, for me personally, that I found the bleeding would get worse um, the more stressed I got. And it didn't have to be stressing about the bleeding, it could be stressing about anything. I think the worst time was not last year, but the year before, was my daughter's birthday before Christmas, and then my other daughter's birthday. Now, clearly that happens every year. That's not going to change. And it happened this year as well, but didn't have the same issue. So again, it's like, well, there are certain things that we can't change. And the more that we realize or remember that actually none of it is up to us, none of it, we can just surrender to the flow of life that is actually happening in front of us. And there's nothing to fight, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to see, that's it. You just kind of get on with it. And that was the difference from last year to this year, was that I was fighting it, because I was worried and I was concerned, and I thought it might be, it might be cancer, or it might be whatever. So, it makes sense to go and get that checked out. This isn't about saying, oh, well, I'll just let anything happen to me and not do anything about it. I don't mean that. I just mean that there's something about seeing the not having to fight with life, the not having to fight with what is, that just makes life so much easier.
Yeah. So you obviously got these things checked out.
Yeah.
You went to the doctors and they presumably said, well, we don't see anything wrong, off on your way. And that is the experience for many of us. And it can be a difficult you either kind of accept that, or you look for another opinion, I guess. And
Yeah.
what I kind of see about that is, like, there will be a feeling. We know in our hearts, not in our heads, if we feel like there's really something wrong, that we need to go and get a second opinion, or we need to see some other practitioner, or, like, we'll really know that. And it's not coming from the noise in our heads. It's not coming from that place of fear. It's not the, oh my god, it could be this, but they might have missed this, or they might have missed that, or perhaps, it's not coming from there. It's a very different place. And so, in your experience, like, obviously going to the doctors and getting all of the symptoms checked out, and then presumably telling you you're fine, what I'm hearing is that at that point, you kind of knew that felt right, like that there wasn't anything else to find out, but there was more to see about why you were having those symptoms. Not that there was
Yeah.
a need for you to find a diagnosis as such, or a an explanation in the physical world.
Yeah, I think I got to the point where I had done everything I could do in the situation from a physical point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I was I was comfortable at that point just saying, okay, well, we'll just wait and see. So they actually did prescribe or recommend a few other kind of interventions to help with the physical symptoms at that point. But I kind of, for whatever reason, just knew that I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
At that point, I had done what I needed to do. Like it had happened. Like I had a small, I don't know if you would even call it operation, but procedure. And that, yeah, I just felt comfortable that at that time had sorted out what needed to be sorted out. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll know if and when I need to do something else.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way. I mean, it's a year since then. And, I still feel that I'll know when I need to go and get medical intervention again.
Yeah.
And I guess that just comes from, maybe trusting your own body and trusting in life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, recognizing that, we're not going to live forever. And at some point we are going to die. And so I guess it's just, again, just accepting that and surrendering to that, but allowing yourself to be guided between now and then, whenever then might be.
Yeah, and I think
I
the
think,
guidance that you're talking about, I think it's really important distinction, because we can get so, I mean, I've had it myself, where, we can get in this idea that there's something wrong with me, and we can spend time on Google. We can, we get right down a rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, it must be this, or it must be that, or it must be, and we can constantly present to the medical profession from a place of fear that these symptoms are are part of something really scary.
yeah,
But that is really different from what you're talking about, I think, which is the kind of knowing that, actually, no, I think I'm okay. Like, I have these symptoms, but I'm okay, and that perhaps there's something to see around the symptoms. Like, we have both seen this, where, this, we've seen that, as you said at the beginning, our body responds to our mind, like 100% of the time. Whatever's going through our mind, whatever thinking we're having, our body's responding to it.
yeah. Whether
So,
that's conscious or
yeah,
subconscious.
oh, totally.
Yeah,
And to be open to the possibility that our bodies, therefore, are presenting symptoms to us to make us aware of this unconscious or conscious thinking that we're having.
Yeah.
That there's a possibility that our body isn't wrong and it's not broken, but it's literally just responding to our mind.
Yeah. And in my experience, it's 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 positive, actually. It doesn't feel positive often, and the symptoms can be very uncomfortable, but the fact that you're still having symptoms is a good sign. And I think I remember, I think it was around the menopause sort of symptoms that I heard this, possibly Tanya, but I'm not sure. It's kind of like your symptoms, any symptoms, whether it's menopause or otherwise, whether it's you've cut your finger, it's like a love letter from your body. So it's saying, you've cut your finger. Okay, I want you to go and put a plaster on it. And if it didn't happen, if you didn't have a symptom, if you didn't feel anything, then you couldn't do that. It's just not possible. And I think recognizing that's all symptoms are, really, is a way of talking to you, I suppose, or expressing to you that there's something, there's something I'd like you to, it's guiding you again to change to something new. And often, I would maybe go as far as to say always, we're not, as humans, we don't really like change. And we certainly don't like change into the unknown. So that then creates an uncomfortable sensation, an uncomfortable feeling that we immediately want to get away from. And our thoughts will go bonkers in that situation. And will continue to go bonkers, in my experience, until we go, oh, wait a minute. Or somebody else points out to you, as you have done on many occasions, when your mind's going down some rabbit hole of what ifing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, wait a minute, what's actually happening here? And usually, before we've put meaning on it with our thinking, it's very simple. Like we talk about anxiety and excitement. I think we've had this conversation because I see it a lot in my work with dogs, is that people will tell me their dogs are excited and people will tell me their dogs are anxious. But when you actually look at the dog, the physical thing that's happening is almost identical.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I can't speak to the dog to know what it's actually thinking, but you can see the physical symptoms are very, very similar. And I've definitely experienced that myself. There's a very fine line between anxiety and excitement. And we try and just decide, depending on what's going on around us, whether it's excitement or anxiety. But actually, if you get down to like the physiology of it, which I'm certainly no doctor, I've got no clue about that apart from my own personal experience, which is it's identical.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like we feel stuff in our bodies and then we make up what that means.
Yeah.
When actually it's just we're feeling whatever thinking we're having in that moment.
Yeah. And I think for me, when I was experiencing panic attacks, like now when I get excited about something and I get that feeling, I'll go, oh God, am I about to have a panic attack? Because that in my head is bad and I don't want that. But actually, now I realize it's not bad at all. And it doesn't bother me. The thought of having a panic attack genuinely does not scare me anymore. Whereas that was a very scary thing before. And as soon as it's not scary anymore, it just doesn't seem to happen. And so that's, like we said at the beginning, it's like this conversation, it doesn't cure anything, but it kind of dissolves it. It kind of disappears, like without even working on it or thinking about it. It just doesn't happen anymore, and you don't even notice until you come along and have a conversation like this and you go, God, yeah, I forgot about that. That was pretty stressful.
Yeah, and the fact that, you know, we were talking about before hitting record, like the whole sort of big issue around bleeding, like that's a physical thing, but that has disappeared along with the insomnia, along with the panic attacks, along with the, you know, so it's kind of, it's my understanding of that is like, you know, our body will, as I say, our body will experience our thinking. Our body is a barometer. It gives us a signal to tell us what's happening in our heads. And, you know, that can be it might be a really minor thing to begin with. And we, you know, will take a tablet. For me, you know, I'd get like a little headache and I would take a tablet and that would be it, get the symptom to disappear because I needed to get on with my day. And it seems to me like we can kind of keep dismissing the symptoms, but they'll kind of ramp up in severity until we kind of are stopped in our tracks, if that's what has to happen. But they can be like, they can range from anything, because our mind, you know, our hormones are affected by our thinking. Our fight or flight system is affected by our thinking. So like the range of symptoms that we can have, from heavy bleeding to panic attacks or whatever, it seems to me like that's all within the you know, entirely linked to the brain body connection. Like our mind and our body are intricately connected. Our body feels every little thought. Every scared thought will set off a reaction in our hormones that will set off the fight or flight system. So the potential to impact every area, to give us symptoms on every level, is kind of is there. But therefore, when we see the role of our thinking and we understand the nature of thought, and our minds begin to settle and quieten, the impact that has on our body with us doing nothing.
And
like
I
the
think
physical symptoms then disappear because there's no need for them to show up, because our body's not having to respond to our crazy thinking.
And I suppose it's maybe helpful to point out that because I think it's very tempting when we hear that to go, okay, right, I know what to do. I just need to get rid of that crazy thinking.
I need to think positively all the time.
So it's maybe helpful to mention that that's not possible in my experience. And when we get into that positive thinking thing, that's another rabbit hole that I certainly was in for quite some time. And probably I'm prone to doing that, you know, often now, just going, oh, well, everything's a bit rubbish, but I'll, you know, it's fine. You know, sometimes it's just not fine. And recognizing that it's just not fine is okay too. And having some compassion for yourself in the fact that you are going through life and doing the absolute best that you can with the thinking that you have at that moment, knowing that it will change. But if you're trying to, I guess, change the thinking, that's really not, in my experience, not a good strategy.
It's hard work, isn't it? It's hard work.
It's hard work. It's hard work, and I would go as far as to say possibly impossible. Because once you've had the thinking, you can't change it, because it's there, it's out, it's in form, it's done. So therefore, you know, it's just allowing it to move through you
Mm-hmm.
seems to me to be the most helpful thing to do with thinking. Full stop. Any thinking, good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't really matter. That's the way we're designed. That's the way that it happens. And yeah, when we start digging around in there, trying to keep the positive thoughts and get rid of the negative ones, then you can get into a real scramble up there. Um, and it's hard to settle, I guess. And I think if I was going to say one thing, it's like when you are experiencing horrible symptoms, and you know you're in pain, like your mind can just go absolutely nuts with like thoughts coming thick and fast, and really crazy thoughts. And in that moment, you know, if you are suffering at the moment as you listen to this, it's like, well, there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you should do except notice it.
Yeah.
And when you notice it, it automatically settles down. It really does. It settles down of its own accord. And then, like what you talked about at the beginning, that whole intuition, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, like you'll be able to hear it, and it will say to you, right, I do need to go to the doctor, and I do need to get a test. But you won't have to ask anybody about it. You won't have to even think about it. You'll just do it. You'll know, and you'll do it. I know people often ask us, like, well, how do I know the difference between the thinking? And it's like, well, whatever it is you're thinking, it's not that. Because you wouldn't, it would be obvious.
Yeah, you don't need to think about something that you just know.
Yeah,
Like
it's
like the whole thing of, you know, if you and all of us have had situations where we have been faced with an emergency of some kind, and we've just known what to do. We haven't had to stand there and think, oh my goodness, right, okay, so this child is severely bleeding now. What did I know? What do I know about that? You know, like, you just know what to do.
Yeah.
In that moment, you know what to do, and that's what you're talking about, right? It's that,
Yeah.
like, there is no thinking when it comes to our intuition. It's a knowing.
Yeah.
And as you say, when you get quiet, when you allow thought to do its thing, which is to come and go without being
Yeah.
fixed on to a particular thought, when we just allow our thinking to do its thing, then we're open to being guided. Then we can hear our intuition.
Yeah, because as far as I can tell, it's happening all the time anyway, to everybody, whether they know about it or not. You know, but like gravity, you know, if there wasn't gravity, then we wouldn't be stuck on the middle of this planet spinning in space. You know, we just wouldn't be. And it's the same for how our system works, as in the human system. For everybody, it's just that we can't hear the intuition because we've got ourselves so caught up in the thinking that we just can't. It's like that saying, you know, you can't see the wood for the trees. It's just that's all that's happening. That's it. End of. And then, you know, when you realize that, you're like, oh, okay, well, it's not going to be helpful to look in that direction. That much I do know. But there are some times that you can't help it. That's just what you do, and you go down the rabbit hole, and that's normal too. Get on Google and go,
and you try
oh
and
my
find
God.
out what's wrong with you.
You go on Google, and then you go, oh, I know this isn't helpful. Oh, but maybe they might tell me something. I really know this isn't helpful. Actually, at some point you go, actually, this is making me feel worse. I'm going to just step away, or whatever actually occurs. But I think, I think as far as hopeful conversations go, I guess I am living proof of the last few years that I can go from experiencing perimenopause and menopause in a very, very adverse way,
Mm.
and really not enjoying it at all, and yeah, being uncomfortable a lot of the time, to barely noticing that it's happening now.
Mhm.
And that's in, a year or so. And it's, I'm clearly still going through it. I do know that, but it's just not nearly such a big deal.
I think,
Um,
just to kind of recap what you said on that, it's like, well, this what it sounds like to me is that there's been a surrendering. You said at the beginning about surrendering
mhm.
to what is. It's like, you know, when we try and fight what is. So if that's not sleeping, if it's heavy bleeding, if it's hot flashes, whatever, if we fight those things, it's like what we resist persists. But in
Yeah,
the kind of surrendering to it and just seeing that the possibility that our body knows what it's doing, it's not broken, it's doing what it needs to do, it's giving us symptoms to give us messages. If we
hmm,
can kind of approach those symptoms, those challenges from that direction,
yeah,
then there's an ease in life.
yeah. And I can honestly say that I, when it came to perimenopause and menopause, I did not realize that was what was on offer. I really thought that it was something that you come across and then you fight with it to make these symptoms go away.
Yeah.
Um, and the sort of realization that, oh my goodness, I don't have to do anything about this. It's completely normal. Like it's this is meant to happen. This is what's supposed to happen. And I think it's in that realization, that everything didn't just disappear overnight, but it did become significantly easier when I stopped fighting with my own body,
Yeah.
um, and started to really appreciate it for what it's done for me over the years. And what it's still doing for me is like, yeah, it just makes life so much easier, and it gives you so much more headspace to do all sorts of other things that you maybe do want to do and do want to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
thank you.
Lots of possibility in there, lots of things for people to take away, I think.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
if people want to find out more about you and the work that you do, because you mentioned about dogs and that's kind of
Oh
your
yeah.
area of expertise, as
Yeah,
well as people, although I
yeah.
suspect your dog training is more about people training. But tell people more about how they can engage with you, and
Um,
find out more.
yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yes. So my website's probably the best place to start. www.juliehelpsyouhelpyourdog.co.uk. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram, all that lovely stuff. Yeah, just come and join me. I guess at the moment I primarily help dog owners with their naughty dogs. But in my view, there are no naughty dogs. There are no naughty dog owners. There's just misunderstandings,
Yeah.
which is yeah, essentially what we've bumped into. So if you want help in understanding either your dog or yourself or both together, then yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie, for joining me, and I will no doubt speak to you very soon.
Perfect. And yes, apologies for the interruptions.
I love
And one of these days, I'm going to do a call without an interruption.
it was.
Boring.
Thank you, Julie. Speak to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye.
Bye.